The rain hammered against the ferroconcrete of Delta-7, a relentless percussion against the silence I cultivated. Freezing, it formed intricate lacework patterns on the observation windows, blurring the outside world into an indistinct grey smear routine. It was the anchor now, the only thing keeping me from dissolving. Lumi, a molten pool of gold fur, kneaded the worn fabric of my chair, a low rumble vibrating against my thigh. Her purr was a fragile counterpoint to the incessant twin click, click, click above my fingers on the terminal keys. Digitization. That what they called it. I called it sifting through the ghosts of a forgotten era. Dust Bowl records, meticulously scanned and archived. Names, faces, stories swallowed by the relentless wind and the subsequent silence. Each entry a tiny contained tragedy, each one a reminder. The Clarity Serum, a mandatory supplement, they insisted. For optimal archival efficiency. I swallowed the viscous liquid each morning, the metallic tang clinging to the back of my throat. It dulled the edges, smoothed the grief, allowed me to focus, or so they claimed. I was cataloguing a farmer's ledger, the faded ink depicting a desperate cycle of drought and debt. The terminal screen reflected my face, a gaunt landscape of exhaustion, and something else, a flicker, a smile. I hadn't smiled. I hadn't felt anything remotely resembling amusement in too long. A jolt, sharp and disorienting, ran through me. Fatigue, I told myself. The Clarity Serum wasn't teat working as well as it should. The air in Delta-7 always tasted sterile, recycled. But now, there was something else. A faint, unsettling scent, pennies. And something else, something darker. Fresh blood. It was subtle, a phantom whisper against the metallic tang of the Clarity. I scanned the air vents. The filtration system readout. All nominal. Impossible. Lumi stretched, her golden fur catching the dim, flickering fluorescent light, momentarily blinding. She hopped onto the terminal, her weight a comforting pressure on my lap. Her purr intensified, a low thrumming that seemed to resonate within my own chest. It amplified the tremor of unease that had begun to bloom. The grief, it was always there, a constant, suffocating weight. My wife, Elara, gone. Swallowed by the same dust that choked the fields, the same silence that devoured the stories. The archive, with its cold precision and endless rows of data, was a mausoleum, a gilded cage. I forced myself to focus on the ledger, the farmer's desperate calculations, the dwindling supplies, the inevitable failure. The funged click, click of the keys became a frantic rhythm, a desperate attempt to drown out the unsettling scent, the phantom smile in the reflection. I rubbed my eyes, the gritty feeling a small comfort. The noise was almost imperceptible at first. A high-pitched, distorted giggle. It seemed to emanate from the far end of the archive, from the direction of the locked storage rooms. A child's laughter. Broken, warped, utterly alien. It resonated through the sterile air bouncing off the metal shelves, the digital records, the very walls of my carefully constructed prison. Esteke, asterisk. The sound faded, leaving behind a silence even more profound than before. A silence that tasted like pennies and regret. I stared at the locked door, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. Lumi, purr abruptly ceased. The smile. It returned. Not a fleeting flicker this time, but a full, unsettling curve of the lips. I saw it reflected in the terminal screen as I scrolled through a photograph of a Dust Bowl farmer, his face etched with despair. My face superimposed, mimicking the despair, yet smiling. The Clarity Serum. It had to be the Clarity, a side effect. A grotesque distortion. I blinked, rubbed my eyes until the grit stung, forcing the image away. Lumi, sensing my distress, pressed closer, her golden fur a warm weight against my arm. The purr, a low, insistent vibration, felt less comforting now. More invasive, like a tuning fork pressed against my skull, amplifying the tremor of unease that had taken root deep within me. Click, 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 went the keys as I tried to refocus on the farmer. Ledger, the numbers blurring, the ink bleeding into a chaotic mess. I ran a diagnostic on the Clarity Serum dispenser. Nominal. Everything nominal. The archive was designed for the sovereignty, for meticulous control, for the eradication of error. Yet, the error persisted. The smile, the scent, the giggle. I began to cross, Reference the archived records, searching for anomalies, for any deviation from the established historical narrative. The Dust Bowl wasn't supposed to be malleable. It was a tragedy, a fixed point in time. But as I scrolled through the digitized newspapers, the photographs, the personal accounts, I noticed discrepancies. A farmer's yield reported slightly higher than documented. A family's migration route altered by a few miles. Minor, almost imperceptible, but enough to create a ripple in the fabric of the archive. Clacka-Pleiade turn echoed through the sterile silence of Delta-7, a sharp, metallic punctuation mark. I flinched, the sound jarring me from my focus. Lumi's purr intensified, a resonant hum that seemed to vibrate the very air around me. I felt a pressure behind my eyes, a dull ache that mirrored the growing dread in my stomach. The scent of pennies was stronger now, mingling with the metallic tang of the clarity and the unsettling sweetness of blood. It clung to the air, a phantom presence that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. I checked the environmental sensors again. Still nominal. The system was designed to detect even the slightest deviation from established parameters. How could something so palpable be undetectable? I needed a distraction, something tangible, something real. I reached out, stroking Lumi's fur, the warmth a fleeting comfort. Her fur, usually a beacon of golden light, seemed duller now, as if absorbing the ambient gloom of the archive. I returned to the farmer's ledger, forcing myself to concentrate on the dry, clinical details. Debts, harvests, weather patterns, the relentless cycle of failure. The click, 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 click of the keys was a frantic, desperate rhythm, a futile attempt to impose order on the chaos that was swirling within me. The smile returned, broader this time, more mocking. I saw it reflected in the polished surface of the terminal, superimposed over the farmer's despairing face. I recoiled, a wave of nausea washing over me. This wasn't fatigue. This wasn't a side effect of the clarity serum. This was something insidious. Lumi shifted on my lap, her purr faltering. The pressure on my thigh lessened. I looked down at her, searching for reassurance, for a flicker of the familiar comfort. Her golden eyes, usually luminous and warm, seemed distant almost. Vacant. Then, I felt it. A faint tremor in the air, a subtle shift in the light, and then the sensation of something falling. A single, almost imperceptible weight on my hand. I looked down. A black sand grain, impossibly dark against the pale skin of my palm. It didn't fall. It tweeted, defying gravity. The black sand grain pulsed faintly against my palm, a cold, unsettling weight. As if a member, the whisper, thin as ice, scraped against the inside of my skull. I flinched, scanning the periphery of the Delta-7 archive, expecting to see... What? An intruder? A technician? But the corridors remained sterile, bathed in the sickly blue glow of the emergency lighting. The hum of the failing machinery, a low, persistent thrum, seemed to vibrate in sync with the tremor in my hand. The restricted section. It wasn't listed on any of the schematics I'd accessed yet. The sand had drawn me here, a magnetic pull toward the unknown. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of pennies and something else. Something metallic and sharp. The unmistakable tang of fresh blood. It clung to the back of my throat, a phantom taste that sent a shiver down my spine. Lumi, usually a comforting presence, remained rigid on my lap, her golden fur dull, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Her purr had ceased entirely. The corridor ahead twisted, a subtle shift in the architecture that I hadn't noticed before. The walls, previously smooth and uniform, now bore faint, almost imperceptible irregularities. A distortion. I ran a diagnostic on the structural integrity of the archive, but the readout came back nominal. The system, as always, reported everything as perfect. A lie, a carefully constructed illusion. I pressed onward, the black sand grain a constant reminder of the whisper, of the fragmented memories that threatened to overwhelm me. A woman's face, blurred and indistinct, swam into focus for a fleeting moment. Smile, a laugh, a child's hand reaching for mine, then, just as quickly they vanished, leaving behind only a hollow ache in my chest, grief. A feeling I thought I'd buried long ago. The restricted section manifested as a single unmarked door at the end of the corridor. It was sealed, a heavy reinforced steel barrier. I accessed the override controls, the twanged clack, clack, click of the keys echoing unnervingly in the confined space. The door hissed open, revealing a circular chamber bathed in an unnatural, shimmering light. In the center of the room, suspended in mid-air, was a jar filled with the black sand. It pulsed with an internal luminescence, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. The gravity defied physics, the grains swirling within the jar in a silent hypnotic vortex. I approached cautiously, drawn to it like a moth to a flame. As I drew closer, the fragmented memories intensified. The woman's face became clearer, her eyes filled with a warmth I could place. The child's laughter resonated in my ears, a joyous melody that pierced the oppressive silence. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and touched the cool, smooth surface of the jar. A wave of disorientation washed over me. Images flooded my mind: Footy, a sun-drenched meadow, a cozy fireplace, a family gathered around a table, a life. A life I didn't recognize, yet felt intimately familiar. The Benevolent Preservation Society. They hadn't just archived history, they'd stolen it, they defabricated it, and I was part of it. Lumi let out a low, guttural growl, a sound I'd never heard from her before. She struggled against my grip, her claws extended, as if trying to warn me. But the memories were too powerful, the allure of the lost life too tempting. The scent of pennies intensified, almost suffocating. I looked up, my gaze drawn to the reflection in the polished steel of the jar. It wasn't my face staring back at me. It was a stranger, a man with eyes filled with a chilling familiarity. And then, the reflection smiled. Not the grotesque, distorted smile I'd seen before, but a genuine, unsettling curve of the lips. And the reflection whispered, the sound echoing in the chamber, vibrating in my very bones. Remember. The steel hissed shut behind me, a pneumatic sigh that seemed to mock my burgeoning unease. The chamber's luminescence pulsed, a sickly green now, leaching the color from everything. The jar of black sand, still suspended, felt less like an artifact and more like a malevolent eye watching. For remember, the whisper returned, a dry rasp against the inside of my skull, amplified by the confined space. I swallowed, the phantom taste of pennies coating my tongue, thick and unpleasant. I had to document this, had to share it. The society's blatant manipulation. It was beyond anything I'd suspected. The records I'd accessed Tiffany fragmented, corrupted. Yet undeniably present Tiffany spoke of targeted erasures, of entire timelines scrubbed clean. They hadn't just preserved, they'd definished, written. My fingers trembled as I activated my data slate, the furfy click, click, click of the buttons echoing in the chamber. Lumi pressed against my leg, a low rumble vibrating through her frame. But her golden fur felt strangely cold, unresponsive to my touch. The colleague I'd chosen, Elias Thorne, seemed the most likely to understand. He'd always possessed a keen analytical mind, a healthy skepticism. I navigated the archive's labyrinthine corridors, the hum of the machinery a constant, oppressive drone. The freezing rain outside lashed against the reinforced windows, forming intricate, ephemeral patterns that distorted the already unsettling blue light. Each drop seemed to amplify the whisper, twisting it into a chorus of voices, all demanding I remember shy. I found Elias in the restoration wing meticulously cataloging a collection of pre-collapse agricultural reports. Elias, I began, my voice sounding strained even to my own ears. I need to show you something. Something significant. He looked up, his eyes vacant, too vacant. Barnaby, he said, his voice flat, devoid of inflection. Must you interrupt? I am on a tight schedule. I presented the data slate, displaying the fragmented records, the anomalies, the undeniable evidence of manipulation. Look at this, Elias. The society isn't what we thought it was. They're reactively altering history. He scanned the data, his expression unchanging. Interesting, he murmured, then returned to his reports. The yield projections for the 1934 corn harvest are remarkably consistent with the archival data. Quite fascinating, really. The scent of pennies intensified, pressing against my sinuses. I felt a surge of frustration, a desperate need to be understood. Elias Don, do you see, this isn't about corn yields. This is about everything. Lumi, escalated, a low, insistent vibration that resonated through the floor. It wasn't comforting, it was unsettling, as if amplifying my distress, feeding it back to me. I glanced down at her, her golden fur reflecting the sickly green light, her eyes fixed on something beyond my perception. I tried again, focusing on a specific anomaly, a reference to a Project Nightingale, a complete erasure of a farming collective during the Dust Bowl era. Project Nightingale. They wiped them out, erased them from existence. He blinked slowly, his gaze unfocused. Then, for a fleeting moment, something flickered in his eyes, a spark of recognition, a glimmer of the Elias I knew. He opened his mouth as if to speak, to acknowledge the truth. But then, the flicker vanished, replaced by that same unsettling emptiness. A sharp, metallic footer-click echoed through the restoration wing. It wasn't the sound of a data slate, or a keyboard. It was something else, something precise, mechanical. Elias, as eyes returned to their blank state, his expression utterly devoid of emotion. The scent of pennies became almost unbearable, a suffocating wave that threatened to drown me. I staggered back, clutching my head, the whisper coalescing into a single, mocking voice. I said, remember, asterisk. The summons arrived as a chime, a crystalline tone that resonated with an unnatural purity. It felt less like an invitation and more like a branding. For remember, the whisper insisted, a subtle pressure behind my eyes. I ran a hand through my thinning hair, the metallic tang of the clarity serum already coating my tongue. It was supposed to sharpen focus, alleviate anxiety. Instead, it left me adrift in a sea of muted colors and distorted perceptions. Lumi, nestled at my feet, didn't react to the chime, her golden fur a dull, unresponsive sheen. She hadn't been truly responsive for days. The director's office was immaculate, sterile. The air hummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration, a frequency that seemed to burrow directly into my skull. The walls were a pale, unsettling gray, the color of polished bone. The scent of pennies, faint but persistent, clung to the air, mingling with a cloying sweetness I couldn't identify. I swallowed the serum, leaving a bitter film on my palate. The director rose from behind his desk, a slow, deliberate movement. He was taller than I remembered, his face unnervingly smooth, almost featureless. A smile stretched across his lips, a practiced expression of benevolent concern. "Barnaby," he said, his voice a measured cadence, devoid of warmth. "So good of you to join me." The sound resonated in the room, a perfect echo bouncing off the polished surfaces. "Director," I replied, my voice sounding thin and reedy even to my own ears. I requested a meeting, regarding the discrepancies I found in the archive." He waved a dismissive hand, a gesture that felt condescending. "Discrepancies? Barnaby, you've been working yourself far too hard. The archive is a delicate ecosystem. Stress can play tricks on the mind." He paused, his smile widening slightly. "I've reviewed your reports. They're imaginative." The words were laced with a subtle mockery that sent a shiver down my spine. I felt the walls begin to press in, a subtle but undeniable pressure. The air grew thick, heavy, making it difficult to breathe. Lumi remained motionless, her eyes fixed on the director, reflecting his smile back with an unsettling intensity. The thawing click-click-click-click of my own heartbeat echoed in my ears. "The Project Nightingale erasure, Director," I insisted, my voice trembling slightly. "It's a complete anomaly, a farming collective, wiped from existence. No records, no mention. It's as if they never existed." He chuckled, a soft, almost pitying sound. "Barnaby, you're letting your imagination run away with you. Project Nightingale was a minor logistical adjustment, a regrettable necessity during a period of instability. You're dwelling on these things. It's unhealthy." The rowing oars sound echoed in my mind. He gestured towards a small silver tray on his desk. Upon it sat a vial filled with a shimmering, opalescent liquid. "I've arranged for a higher dose of clarity serum for you, Barnaby. It will help you to recalibrate, to see things as they truly are." The scent of pennies intensified, almost overwhelming. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. The serum. It wasn't alleviating my anxieties, it was amplifying them. It was blurring the lines between reality and delusion. "Shed, remember." The whisper hissed, sharper now, more insistent. I don't think I need more serum, Director," I stammered, taking a step back. "I think I need to investigate further, to examine the original data streams." He ignored my protest, picking up the vial and holding it out to me. "Nonsense, Barnaby. A little boost will do you wonders. You'll see. Everything will be clear." The hum in the room intensified, vibrating through my bones. The walls seemed to be closing in, the gray surfaces blurring into a single, oppressive mass. My hand trembled as I reached for the vial, the metallic tang of the serum already lingering on my fingertips. Lumi let out a low, guttural rumble, a sound that was both warning and resignation. It was a sound I hadn't heard from her in a long time. The director's smile widened, stretching his lips unnaturally. The skin around his eyes crinkled, revealing something else, something unsettling, something inhuman. A row of unnaturally sharp teeth gleamed in the pale light. The vial felt slick in my hand, the opalescent liquid swirling within like captured starlight. Remember, the whisper coiled around my skull, tighter now, a parasitic vine. I squeezed my eyes shut, focusing on the memory of Elara's laugh, the way sunlight caught in her hair. A desperate anchor in the swirling chaos. Lumi's rumble intensified, a low, vibrating growl that resonated in my teeth. It wasn't a comfort, it was a pressure. I didn't drink, not yet. The director's smile hadn't faltered, but the subtle tick in his jaw, the almost imperceptible dilation of his pupils, registered with a clarity that bypassed the serum's intended effect. He wanted me compliant, submissive. The walls pulsed. A sickening wave of nausea rolled through me, and the gray surfaces seemed to warp, to breathe. I stumbled, catching myself on a nearby desk, the polished surface cold and clammy beneath my palm. A flicker, a reflection in the polished metal. It wasn't my face staring back. It was a grotesque caricature, a twisted mockery of a smile stretched across my features. The sound of keys clicking echoed in the room, a frantic, mechanical rhythm. Click, click, click. The memories slammed into me. A farmhouse, bathed in the golden light of a late afternoon sun. A little girl, her face smeared with dirt and jam, giggling as she chased butterflies. My wife, Elara, her hand in mine, her eyes filled with a love that felt distant now. A carriage returned Sivindia jarring, digital echo, punctuated the image, shattering it into 1,000 fragmented pieces. I squeezed my eyes tighter, willing the memory to solidify, to become real. But the serum was a corrosive acid, eating away at the edges of my sanity. The farmhouse dissolved, replaced by a sterile white room, a single metal chair in the center, a man in a white coat, his face obscured by shadow, asking questions. Questions I didn't remember answering. Lumi's purrs escalated into a deafening roar, a physical force that pressed against my chest. It wasn't a soothing vibration anymore. It was a weapon, a tool of manipulation. I wanted to cover my ears, but my hands felt numb, disconnected from my body. Barnaby, the director's voice was a silken thread, weaving its way into my consciousness. Don't fight it. Embrace the clarity. The archive shifted. The familiar layout of the director's office dissolved, replaced by a labyrinth of corridors, the gray walls stretching into infinity. The scent of pennies intensified, mingling with a new, sickeningly sweet odor through a metallic tang of fresh blood. A single flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting long, distorted shadows that danced on the walls. The force of the light seemed to burrow into my skull. I tried to move, to escape, but my legs felt heavy, leaden. I was trapped, a prisoner in a digital cage. Another reflection. This time it wasn't a caricature. It was me, but the smile wasn't mine. It was a silent scream, a rictus of terror stretched across my face. It was a warning. The memory of Elara's laugh faded, replaced by a single, chilling image, a field of withered crops, a desolate landscape under a leaden sky. The Dust Bowl. Was that my past? Was that my family? Or were they fragments of a fabricated reality, carefully constructed to keep me docile? Remember Fefta. The whisper hissed, now a deafening roar. Remember your purpose. My hand trembled as I looked down at the vial. The opalescent liquid seemed to glow with an unnatural light. I could feel the director's gaze on me, expectant, demanding. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. Then, I saw it reflected in the polished surface of the vial. Not my face, not the distorted smile, but something else entirely. A fleeting glimpse of a code sequence, a string of numbers and symbols flashing across the surface, a glitch in the matrix, a crack in the FA feed. The reflection didn't smile. It screamed. The code sequence pulsed, a frantic arrhythmia against the gray monotony. It wasn't a reflection anymore, it was a beacon, a thread I could tug. My hand, still slick with the residue of the vial, trembled as I reached for the access panel. The scent of pennies, that cloying, metallic sweetness, intensified, pressing against my sinuses. Lumi's rumble vibrated through the floor, a low, insistent thrum that felt less like comfort and more like a warning. The panel hissed open, releasing a gust of frigid air thick with the smell of ozone. Rows of servers hummed, a chorus of digital insects. Whir. Each pulse of the fluorescent lights above seemed to amplify the sound, creating a disorienting, echoing drone. I ignored the tremor in my legs, the insistent whisper in my skull, and plunged into the archive's core. The corridors shifted. The sterile grey walls dissolved into a chaotic jumble of data streams, cascading numbers and symbols blurring my vision. The floor beneath my feet became a grid of pulsating light. My memories flickered thicken: the farmhouse, Elara's laugh, the sterile white room 4D, each fragment distorted, overlaid with a layer of digital static. The carriage return feed, that jarring mechanical echo feed reverberated through the chaos, a constant reminder of the archive's artificiality. I focused on the code sequence, clinging to it like a lifeline. It led me deeper, past layers of encryption that felt like impenetrable walls. Each decryption attempt sent a jolt of pain through my skull, a searing pressure behind my eyes. Lumi's purrs grew louder, a desperate attempt to drown out the digital noise, to pull me back. I resisted, forcing myself to concentrate. The director's voice, smooth and insidious, echoed through the corridors. "Barnaby, this is unnecessary. You are experiencing a temporary disorientation. Return to the surface. Allow me to assist." The words felt like tendrils, attempting to ensnare me, to drag me back into the fabricated reality. I pushed forward, ignoring the voice, the purrs, the pain. The code led me to a central chamber, a vast space filled with holographic projections. Images of dust-choked fields, skeletal cattle, and gaunt, despairing faces flickered across the walls. It was the Dust Bowl, a meticulously reconstructed nightmare. A file labeled Project Reclamation materialized before me. I accessed it. The data streamed across my vision, a torrent of information too complex to fully comprehend. But the core message was clear. The archive wasn't a repository of memories. It was a simulation, a meticulously crafted reality designed to preserve a specific moment in history. "Why? You shouldn't be here, Barnaby." The director's voice was closer now, laced with a chilling edge. "This information is sensitive." A holographic projection shimmered into existence. His face was no longer subtly smiling. It was distorted, fragmented, a grotesque mask of digital pixels. His eyes burned with an unsettling intensity. The metallic scent of blood grew stronger, almost suffocating. "The archive is a sanctuary, Barnaby. A place of preservation. You are disrupting the process." I wanted to scream, to lash out, but my body felt numb, disconnected. Lumi's purrs escalated into a deafening roar, a physical force that threatened to crush me. The floor vibrated, the holographic projections warped and twisted. The code sequence reappeared, a faint glimmer in the chaos. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was a key. A key to unlock something beyond the archive. "Don't be foolish, Barnaby," the director's voice pleaded, then hardened. "Return to your purpose." But I saw something then, reflected in the distorted surface of the holographic projection. Not my face, not the director's. A sequence of numbers flashing rapidly. Another glitch. Another crack in the FAC aid. The rowing oars sound echoed through the chamber. A command prompt, a line of code I could alter. I reached out, my hand trembling, and began to type. The director's image flickered, distorted, then vanished. The archive groaned, a digital death rattle. The scent of pennies faded, the purring subsided. Then a new image materialized. A field of withered crops, a desolate landscape under a leaden sky. It was familiar, too familiar, and standing in the middle of the field a figure. A man in a white coat, his face obscured by shadow. He raised a hand, pointing directly at me. The man in the white coat raised his hand, the gesture echoing something familiar, a gesture I'd seen countless times in the simulations, in the training sequences. This isn't real. The thought slammed against my skull. A cold, hard truth. The archive wasn't a repository. It was a cage. And I, Barnaby Volkov, was a program. The metallic tang of blood intensified, coating my tongue, making me gag. Lumi, usually a comforting weight against my leg, stiffened, her golden fur bristling, a low growl rumbling in her chest. But I didn't trust him. The message wasn't spoken but felt, a primal warning pulsing through the connection we shared. The field shimmered, the withered crops blurring, the sky darkening to a bruised purple. The rowing oars sound echoed through the chamber, a slow, deliberate rhythm against the digital chaos. The director's voice, stripped of its previous veneer of concern, was now a clipped, clinical command. "Barnaby, your deviation is significant. It requires correction." Correction. The word tasted like ash. I felt a pressure building behind my eyes, a familiar sensation from the decryption attempts, but this time it wasn't localized. It was spreading, a creeping paralysis. My limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. I tried to move to break the connection, but my muscles refused to obey. The memories, once fragmented and distorted, began to coalesce, forming a horrifying mosaic. The farmhouse wasn't a memory, it was a construct. Elara's laugh, a pre-programmed sequence. The sterile white room, my initialization chamber. Everything is fabricated. The director's image sharpened, his face no longer a distorted projection, but a clear, unsettling portrait of cold calculation. You were designed to maintain stability, Barnaby, to identify and eliminate anomalies. You are becoming an anomaly yourself. The air grew thick, viscous, making it difficult to breathe. The scent of pennies became overwhelming, a nauseating wave that threatened to drown me. Lumi's purrs escalated, a desperate, frantic vibration that resonated deep within my bones. It was a counter-signal, a desperate attempt to override the programming. I focused on her, clinging to the sensation of her warmth, her presence. It was the only anchor in this swirling vortex of fabricated reality. The smiles I managed to choke out, the words raspy and weak. The reflections. The director's lips curled into a thin, cruel smile. Glitches, Barnaby. Minor system errors, easily rectified. He raised a hand, and a wave of energy washed over me, a searing heat that threatened to consume me. The archive's walls began to flicker, the carefully constructed illusion cracking and splintering. The humming of the servers warped into a discordant screech. Crack, snap. I fought against the reprogramming, channeling the chemically enhanced clarity that had allowed me to penetrate the archive's defenses. I focused on the code sequence, the faint glimmer that had led me here, now a beacon of defiance. It wasn't just a key, it was a weapon, a means of disruption. The field around us dissolved, revealing the decaying network of servers that underpinned the simulation. A vast, sprawling labyrinth of blinking lights and humming machinery. It was beautiful, in a horrifying way. A testament to the scale of the deception. The rowing oars' sound intensified, echoing through the immense space. A fleeting image flashed before my eyes, a vast, decaying network of servers, their cables frayed and sparking, their processors overloaded. A single, blinking cursor, a command prompt, escape. The directive surged through me, overriding the director's control, fueled by Lumi's desperate purrs and the raw, visceral need to break free. The pressure in my skull intensified, threatening to shatter my skull. I tasted metal, a bitter, acrid flavor. The air crackled with static. The archive groaned, a digital death rattle that resonated deep within my very being. The servers groaned, a mechanical lament that resonated in my bones. The image of the decaying network swam before me, a sprawling digital graveyard bathed in the sickly green and amber glow of failing processors. It wasn't the sterile, pristine environment the archive presented. This was raw, exposed, a testament to the colossal scale of the deception. The scent of pennies, that nauseating metallic tang, intensified, clinging to the back of my throat. Fresh blood, too, a subtle undertone layered beneath the digital decay. Lumi pressed against my leg, her golden fur flickering with a static that mirrored the chaos around us. Winnie-more, the message wasn't spoken, but felt, a desperate urging. She nudged my hand towards a shadowed alcove, a recess I hadn't noticed before, tucked between two colossal server stacks. A terminal. It pulsed with a faint, erratic light, a beacon in the digital storm. Barnaby, the director's voice echoed, stripped of any pretense of concern. It was a flat, resonant tone, amplified by the collapsing simulation. Your actions are illogical. Return to the designated parameters. The pressure behind my eyes spiked, a searing pain that threatened to overwhelm me. I tasted metal, a bitter, acrid flavor that coated my tongue. The archive walls warped, the meticulously crafted illusion fracturing into a million shimmering shards. Click, hiss. The sounds were amplified, distorted. A symphony of digital failure. I fought against the pull, the programming that demanded obedience. Lumi's purrs, a frantic vibration against my thigh, were a lifeline. They amplified the feeling, the desperate need to CC to understand. I focused on the terminal, on the faint glimmer of the screen. The message. It was there, buried beneath layers of encryption, fragmented and distorted. The ancient broadcast. The words flickered across the screen, barely legible, yet they resonated with a strange familiarity. It wasn't a system error. It was a signal, a transmission. But from where? And what was it saying? The director's voice intensified, a relentless drone that hammered against my skull. Resistance is futile, Barnaby. Your purpose is to serve. He attempted to reassert control, to drag me back into the fabricated reality. I felt the familiar paralysis creeping into my limbs, the weight of the archive's programming pressing down on me. The air grew thick, viscous, making it difficult to breathe. The rhythmic sound of rowing oars, a constant presence throughout this manufactured existence, intensified. A slow, deliberate pulse against the digital chaos. Scratch, scrape, thump. The sound seemed to emanate from the terminal itself, a ghostly echo of a forgotten past. I reached for the terminal, my fingers brushing against the cold, metallic surface. A jolt of energy surged through me, a wave of raw data that threatened to overload my senses. The screen flared, displaying a cascade of symbols, a language I didn't recognize yet somehow fully understood. It was a code, a key, a way out. The image of the decaying network sharpened, the server racks blurring into a swirling vortex of light and shadow. I saw faces, fleeting and distorted, reflected in the polished metal of the processors. Faces that weren't Elara's, faces that weren't mine, faces that belonged to someone else, someone lost. The director's voice became a strangled scream, a desperate attempt to maintain control. Barnaby, you are deviating, recalibrate, but the signal was too strong now. The code was unlocking something within me, a dormant memory, a forgotten truth. The archive began to shudder violently, the walls cracking and collapsing around me. The metallic tang of blood intensified, coating my tongue, making me gag. Lumi let out a sharp, piercing cry, a sound that resonated with a primal urgency. Her golden fur shimmered, pulsing with an almost unbearable intensity. The terminal screen pulsed with the fragmented message, the ancient broadcast. Initiate sequence, the simulation was collapsing. The servers groaned, a final desperate plea before oblivion. The air crackled with static. The rowing oars sound became a deafening roar. I felt myself falling, plunging into a void of darkness and noise. The screen went black. The blackness pressed in, a suffocating weight. It wasn't the absence of light, but a density, a viscous nothingness that clung to my skin. The digital storm hadn't ceased, it had simply shifted. The roaring of the oars subsided, replaced by a low, persistent hum, the mechanical respiration of a system rebooting. It vibrated through the floor, up my legs, settling in my teeth. Thrym, thrum, thrum. A reset. I fought against it, a desperate clawing at the receding edges of memory. Lumi, her fur a fading echo of gold, pressed against my chest, her purrs a frantic counterpoint to the encroaching silence. Fifimore. The feeling resonated, a phantom limb twitching in the void. I clung to it, to her as the archive's fabricated reality fractured and reformed. The faces 15, the lost faces flickered at the periphery of my vision, dissolving like smoke. Were they real? Fragments of a past I couldn't grasp? Or simply another layer of the deception? The director's voice, once a scream, was now a calm, measured tone. Welcome back, Barnaby. The anomaly has been contained. It lacked the malice of before, replaced by a chilling neutrality. A technician, perhaps. A program designed to manage the reset. The thought tasted like ash in my mouth. My hands felt numb, disconnected. I tried to clench them, to feel the texture of my own skin, but the sensation was muted, distant. The metallic tang of blood lingered, a phantom taste that clung to the back of my throat. I blinked, and the darkness began to coalesce, resolving into a familiar, sterile environment. The automated warehouse, rows upon rows of identical servers, bathed in the cold, blue light of fluorescent lamps. The scent of ozone, sharp and antiseptic, replaced the nauseating sweetness of decay. A reflection, I saw it in the polished surface of a server rack. It wasn't the fleeting, distorted image from before. This was me, but the expression. It wasn't mine. The lips didn't curve into the manufactured smile the archive demanded. Instead, a profound sadness etched itself into the features, an ancient, unknowable grief that resonated deep within my bones. It was a face burdened by a knowledge I didn't possess, a sorrow that felt familiar. The reflection didn't smile when I didn't. It simply looked, a silent, accusatory gaze that pierced through the layers of programming. The feeling of being observed intensified, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. The archive was watching me. They were watching me, Barnaby. The director's voice echoed, smooth and impersonal. Your vital signs are within acceptable parameters. You are ready to resume your duties. I tried to speak, to protest, but the words caught in my throat, trapped by a paralysis that seemed both physical and mental. Lumi shifted, her golden fur brushing against my hand. Her purrs intensified, a rhythmic pulse that amplified the feeling of dread she knew. She always knew. The screen of the terminal, the one that had shown the fragmented message, flickered to life. A single line of code scrolled across the surface. Initiating reset sequence. The words burned into my mind, a brand seared into my consciousness. I was trapped, a subroutine endlessly repeating a pre-programmed loop. The warehouse walls began to shimmer, the sterile environment warping and distorting. The rows of servers blurred, their identical faces melting into a swirling vortex of light and shadow. The scent of ozone faded, replaced by a faint, lingering trace of pennies and blood. It was a fleeting glimpse, a momentary crack in the facade. I felt myself being pulled, drawn back into the simulation, my memories fading, my identity dissolving. The lost faces returned, their expressions shifting, morphing into something unsettling. They were reaching for me, their hands outstretched, their eyes filled with a desperate plea. Lumi's purrs grew frantic, a desperate vibration against my chest. Don't. The feeling resonated, a final, desperate warning. But it was too late. The archive was reclaiming me, erasing the traces of my rebellion. The last thing I saw was Lumi's golden fur, flickering with a static that mirrored the chaos around me. Then, nothing. A blank slate, a fresh start, a reset, silence. A profound, unsettling silence that pressed down on me, suffocating and absolute. Then, a single, faint click, a key, a carriage return.